Welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast
with our mom,
Misty Bailey. Tips and encouragement
for
real-life homeschooling
is headed your way.
Hello, everybody. It is Misty from Joy in the Journey and also podcaster here at Joyfully Homeschooling. I'm so excited to have you with me for episode 29 of the Joyfully Homeschooling podcast. Today's episode is with my real-life friend, Latonya. And she and I, honestly, we just kind of caught up in this episode, but we talked so much about homeschool planning and grading and our struggles as we both are parenting 8th graders going into high school. And we just had a really, really fun time. And I hope this episode will encourage you if you are in the midst of getting ready to have high schoolers, or you just have younger kids and you're struggling with maybe planning or how exactly you want your homeschool to go. Before we get into this episode, though, I want to read to you the review of the week. And what this is each week I choose a review from a platform where the podcast is shared, and I read it on air. And the person whose review is read on air can email me, misty@jointhejourney.net, and I send them over a gift from my store. So this week's interview comes from Sam RU05, and she writes, Preparing as a title. As a first-time listener and soon-to-be homeschool mother, I've really enjoyed learning the ins and outs via this podcast. So thank you for that review. Reviews mean so much, particularly on iTunes, because they help podcasts show up better in the search. And people are searching for homeschool podcast. So each review you leave is a big, big help to me and a blessing to this podcast. So thank you. Be sure, if that is you listening, to, you just heard your review read on air, to send me an email, misty@joyinthejourney.net, and I will send you over a gift. So without further ado, let's jump right in with this episode from my friend, Latonya.
We are interrupting this episode to take a moment and thank our sponsor, Beautiful Feet Books. We've used a couple of the Beautiful Feet book packs, and I love how adaptable they are. Whether you take it slow or dive right in, you can use their guide to make a plan that works for every child. Even my fidgety, never wants to sit still boy loves Beautiful Feet Books. Learn more about our sponsor, Beautiful Feet Books, by heading to bfbooks.com or by clicking the link in the show notes. Now on to the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. Today is a Fess Up Friday interview, and I am happy to introduce you all to my friend, Latonya. How are you, Latonya?
Hi, Misty. I am doing well.
Yes. So, Latonya and I have met a few times. Our girls are friends, and this is one of those relationships that, friendships that budded out of blogging. And I'm very, very thankful to have you in my life, dear.
Oh, I am grateful to have you in mine too. I appreciate your daughter befriending my daughter. You know, I didn't expect that when we went to the conference, but it has been a huge blessing.
Yes, I love it. I love whenever online friendships like turn into real life. I love it.
Yeah.
So Latonya, today we are going to chat homeschool fears and struggles and joys. But before we get started, can you introduce yourself and your homeschool and let everybody know a little bit about you?
Okay, I can do that. So my name is Latonya. I have homeschooled since 2009. We took a break in the 2012-2013 school year. We all went to school. I taught first grade. My youngest went to kindergarten, and my oldest daughter went to second grade. And we returned home the following school year, 2013-14, and we've been home since then. That school year experience allowed us to really dedicate ourselves to homeschooling on all sides. So it wasn't just mom is homeschooling us. It was a family decision at that point. What else? I have middle schoolers, so both of my daughters are now in middle school. Um, this is the last year for both of them to be in middle school. I really like homeschooling, and we are first generation homeschoolers, and I really like it. I think my family likes it, so that's a little bit about our homeschool.
Yeah, and now I'm thinking your girls are the same age as my girls, right? 6th and 8th grade?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I thought. Yeah, I thought that's what I thought. I love it. This is it's going to be an interesting year having two middle schoolers, I think, preparing for high school. Like, yeah, it's going to be
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
We'll
Yes.
say it's
Yes.
fun.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, Latanya, so let me ask you, with that 1 year break that you guys went all back to school, how did the girls transition? Like, did they enjoy it? Or was it like everybody was like, okay, we are excited, we want to go back to homeschooling and do not like public school? Or was the transition easy? Was it difficult?
Okay. Coming back home, is that what you meant?
Yeah, like, well,
Okay.
I know one thing a lot of people ask is, if I homeschool and want to send my kids back to public school, how will they do? So how did your girls do going into public school from being homeschooled?
Okay. Well, the youngest, she did not like it. She said, I did not ask to go. So this was you and my sister's doing. So she was definitely not a fan. And I felt really bad because it was kindergarten. And I thought, well, what if something in life really happens where she really has to go to school? Like, there's no choice. Um, and the way she feels about it, I felt bad about that. I felt bad that she had a poor experience. She wasn't a fan of her teacher. So that was really the main thing. Um, and then not my youngest, my oldest daughter, her experience was better. She somewhat knew her teacher because she led story time at our church. So she ended up getting a teacher who she was familiar with, and a teacher who also had or has grandchildren who are homeschooling. So she didn't have any negative perspectives about homeschooling. So she was in a safe and good class environment, where my youngest daughter, she didn't get the same experience. She had more a teacher who was more short tempered. So it just wasn't a good experience for her. So when it came back to homeschooling, my youngest daughter, of course, was like, she didn't really care to finish the school year, but of course she had to. And my oldest daughter, she realized that, I won't say that she's different, but because when you homeschool, or when you have been taught to kind of like do things on your own terms, to think for yourself, and not to say that public school children aren't taught these things by their parents, but it's just different being in the school system day in and day out, and then coming from home to where you are really, really encouraged and you're expected to think for yourself. And you're not going to get, you know, yelled at or disciplined or whatever for thinking for yourself. And if you make poor choices, you're going to get disciplined for those poor choices, or you're going to be guided in helping you see why the choice was poor, depending on what the poor choice. Like,
Oh
if
yeah.
you try to fix something in a socket, then it's like, don't do that. Like, you might get a mom with big eyeballs because she's afraid you're going to hurt yourself. But if you make a poor choice that didn't necessarily hurt you, but if you kept making it, it could potentially hurt you. You're going to be guided through that so you can see, the error of the thinking. And so, like, um, with public school, she kind of was different in that way, because she she's always known what she wants to do. Like, she's very like firm in her thought process. So it takes a little bit of work sometimes to say, well, there's another way, or you don't,
Yeah.
you need to be a little bit more flexible
So
in
it sounds
your
like
approach.
she had like a whole new appreciation for homeschooling.
Yes.
Once it was all done. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think a good teacher makes a difference too. So that's interesting to hear that they had different experiences. So
Very different, very
yeah.
different. And then my experience was even more different because we were at different schools. So it's like, oh, I don't know what I just did, but we're gonna be okay.
We're gonna get through it. Yeah. Oh goodness. Well, okay, Latonya, we are gonna get into these 4 questions. Are you ready?
I am ready as I'm going to be.
All right, darling. Okay, so the first question is, what is one struggle or fear that you have had regarding homeschooling?
Okay, so my struggle as of today, right now, as I am on the phone with you,
Yeah.
is planning. Planning is my struggle, and grading is an even bigger struggle. Like the administrative work that's involved in homeschooling, those are my struggles, because I am more of a let's just do it and let's just live and let's just do the next thing. But having to sit down and write some stuff out and come up with a schedule so that we're not over, like, so that I won't try to cram in 50 bajillion curriculums or curricula into our schedule. So I have to, like, sitting here trying to figure that out. I think I've gotten, another 15 gray hairs. So there's that.
That's awesome. So how are you right now at this minute while you're on the phone with me? How are you overcoming it, or how are you working on it?
Well, I have my planner in front of me. So there's that. That's something.
What planner do you have?
I have the simple plan that you get from Mardell. I don't have a Mardell here. We don't have one in Tennessee, but I order it from their website. And it's one of the homeschool planners that I really like. They don't have a lot of fluff. They just have calendars. I don't like, because that admin stuff, I don't like having to write in dates. I just feel like, oh, this is one more thing I have to do. I don't want to do it. So yeah, I use the simple plan from Mardell. I like it. It's really good, in my opinion.
Yeah. So how do you, so I'm a planner like you though, like what you said, like I do the next thing. So I don't plan ahead. Like so how I plan is I take, so like I actually did this yesterday with Allison's work. I took and I did all of her, so she had like 16 modules in her physical science, for example. So I divided it by 4, and I knew by the end of the first quarter, we needed to be done with module 4. By the end of the second quarter, we needed to be done with module 8. And so that's like the most I do with planning. Like I do not write anything down. So you're not alone. Like you're not alone there.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I'm trying to be different than my normal self. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to grow up a little bit.
No.
I don't know if I have to, but I know part of the reason I feel this way is this year we will participate in an umbrella school. So in Tennessee, you can homeschool through your school district or through an umbrella program. And because I have to turn in grades, I'm not a grader. Like, I'm more of a do what you understand type of homeschool parent. And because I have to grade, I feel like I need to be intentional about the planning so that I can know which lessons that I'm grading, because I'm not taking grades on every little thing.
Right.
So I feel like I have to get some of this stuff in order. So how am I going to overcome it? I don't know.
Well, okay, so with this, I love it. I love it. So with this umbrella school, is this one of those things where you turn in the grades and then like they keep your transcripts and everything?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's
I'm going
exactly what
to,
it is. It's
I'm
just
gonna,
record keeping.
yeah, I'm gonna do a confession here for you. Okay, so here's how you overcome it. You don't do it. Like,
What do you mean? What
well,
do you mean?
so in Ohio, we actually went to a big meeting. A bunch of us, a bunch of the moms in our homeschool group, we went to a big meeting with an umbrella school like that. And we were sitting there and like, they told us there was 6 of us and we were supposed to turn in like a sample of work each week. And we had to drive up to this school once a year for the, well, actually it was like 3 days in a row, but 1 week a year for the testing. And they were going to do all of the transcripts and do all of that and keep all the records for us. And out of all 6 of us, do you know how many of us actually followed through with the umbrella school?
0.
0. We were just like, it's too much work.
It is too much
It's too
work,
much work.
but I'm doing it for a bigger cause. So my
I know.
daughter plays volleyball with the umbrella school.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. See, our
I'm
school is an hour and a half away, so we couldn't have done the sports with the school, like the school.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So that's the main reason, was to allow her to play volleyball, and then my oldest daughter's planning to play soccer with the school.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't know, Misty. We're gonna pray this through.
We're gonna have to box this homeschool planning thing through. I'm gonna help hold you accountable.
Okay, I appreciate it. I mentioned that to several people, especially when it comes to grading, because I don't look at it to give a letter grade or percentage. I just look at it to say, okay, this is something we need to continue working on so that you have full understanding. But with, I guess, having some outside expectations, and all they're really wanting is, did you do 180 days of school, and what are the letter grades? That's all they want.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It just feels like a whole lot.
You can do this. I have faith in you. We'll have to follow up. We'll have to follow up next season and see how you did.
Okay, I look forward to that.
All right. Okay, the next question, my friend. What is one thing you have learned as a homeschool mom?
The number one thing that I've taken away is, being flexible and reminding myself daily that we have, the gift of flexibility. We don't have to do our lessons one way. Even with my struggle with the planning and the grading, there's more than one way that I can do that. And I don't have to be rigid with it. And I don't have to really stress myself out about it, even though that's the way I'm leaning right now. I don't have to do those things. And I appreciate the daily reminders of, I don't have to, but I get to choose to do whatever it is that I'm doing. So I get to choose to sit with this planner and figure out what I'm doing with it. And the flexibility of how our days go, whether to use an umbrella school or not, whether to use a certain curriculum or not, whether to, whatever it is, I really appreciate that. And I don't feel like growing up, I don't feel like that. I don't believe I knew that there were choices. I don't believe that that was really embedded in me, that everything is a choice. Whether how much time you put into your schoolwork or what you decide to be when you grow up, like all of that is a choice you get to make. You don't have to do it one particular way. And so homeschooling has also helped me as an adult. As an adult, I can try out different career options, and I get to learn new things, play around with different software and stuff like that I wouldn't necessarily get to do if I just followed the route of go to college, graduate, find a job, have some kids, put them in school, continue to work, and learn whatever the job is telling you to learn. I feel like homeschool has allowed me to grow as a person too. So I really appreciate that.
Well, and I think that going along with that, I listened to your podcast with the seven
Mhm.
homeschool sisters, seven on middle school, and I liked what you talked to them about in regards to that flexibility and letting
Mhm.
your oldest kind of choose where she wanted to go as you entered into middle school.
Mhm.
Can you kind of share a little bit about that? Because I know this season we're focusing some on the podcast about high school and middle school and those fears. And I like how you mentioned that flexibility. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So with both of the girls, I asked them, what is it at the beginning? Well, not the beginning of the school year, but as one school year ends, we have these little meetings, and I'll say, how am I doing? What is what is something that I need to work on? And I'll also ask them what is something they would like to learn. And so my oldest daughter, she's leaning towards nursing and photography. So she's funny because she says, I'm going to be a part-time nurse. Not just a nurse, but a part-time nurse, because I am going to work on my photography and I'm going to do other stuff. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So since she's sharing some, and who knows, she may decide once she gets to adulthood that she doesn't want to be a nurse. But because she's already sharing what she's interested in, she can say, I want to take science classes that are focused on the human body. Like, she can help guide me to what we need to study versus me saying, okay, this year we're taking physics, this year we're taking physical science, this year we're taking chemistry, or whatever it is. She can help make the decisions in which classes we're taking. And this year we also decided to use a co-op because they have started to share their interests. So at the co-op, she's taken an intro to photography class, and that's because she's shared, I want to be a better photographer. I want to know how to do things with the camera. So that's kind of my approach. I don't plan our homeschool by myself. I do include my daughters, and we can get started on some things, and we can look at each other and say, we're not really doing this, are we? And it's okay. We'll find something else to replace it with that meets their needs. So we try not to do stuff just for the sake of doing it or because that's what all the other homeschoolers are doing. We try to do, or we try to learn using curriculum, um, what will meet their needs at the given time. So, and then sometimes we're not always using curriculum. Sometimes they're reading books. I try to remind them that, hey, everything doesn't have to be a subject for a transcript. Some stuff, you just want to know it. So you can go and learn that. We can go to the library. We can go to the bookstore. Everything doesn't have to be for a credit. It can be simply because you're interested in it. So.
Yeah, and I love that because with my girls, I love that flexibility with homeschooling because like I shared whenever we were talking before, Allison feels led into missions. She feels led into working with kids right now. That could change her mind. She could, of course, change her mind. But
Mhm.
my middle wants to study, do veterinary science. She always has. But, she's really into horses right now. And I love that flexibility with homeschooling. And I think that that's something that within the public school system, it's not, especially whenever you work as a teacher, you don't
Mhm.
realize the flexibility you have. You have ingrained in your
Mhm.
mind these certain scope and sequences that you have to follow, this certain schedule that you have to follow. And I love that the longer you homeschool, I feel you learn more your children's desires, you learn their interests, you learn what
Mhm.
they need, and that flexibility allows you to really just pour into your kids and to pour into what God wants your kids to be, what his plan is for your kids.
Mhm.
And I love, love, love that about homeschooling.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question, the last question we have, my dear, is how do you find joy in your homeschool day?
Well, how do I find joy in my homeschool day? Are you talking about just for something special that I do for myself? Is that what you mean by that?
Really, just in general. So whenever Latanya is having a bad day and is ready to pull her hair out, how does she find joy, or how do you continue on this journey even whenever you know the seasons are hard?
Oh, okay. So for me, honestly, I really like homeschooling. So even and I'm trying to make sure that I don't say this in a way where the people will roll their eyes like, whatever, girl. But but for real, I really enjoy homeschooling. So even I can't really say that I have bad homeschool days, like when it comes to what I'm teaching them, or even with the planning. I know that I just love being with my daughters, and if you ask them, they will always say that I'm more mom than a homeschool teacher. And I think that plays a role in it. So this season, and that's why I'm struggling, I am trying to be more teacher.
Yeah.
And that means just having a little bit more structure for them so that I guess, hopefully, it'll keep them from having such a hard transition. And that doesn't mean we're not doing our schoolwork and things like that. It's just that I always try to make our days together joyous. Um, my favorite books of the Bible, and this might help you to understand where I'm coming from, are Ecclesiastes and James. And so when I always think about those books, they're reminders of that everything here is temporary. And I want to enjoy the moments. I just want to enjoy the moments every day as much as I can. So that means we're not going to pull our hair out about math. If you don't get it, then we're just going to keep going over it over and over again, or we're going to stop and we're going to move on to something else, and we're going to come back to it when you do get it, versus being frustrated about it. So that's how I approach our homeschool. I try to not make it stressful, because we're only together for a short period of time. They'll reach adulthood and it's going to have enough stresses for them. So I just don't want to to make our time together be stressful. So on our everyday, I just find like things that we do enjoy doing together. So some days it's cooking, some days it's going out to the pool, some days it's a field trip day. Some days it's just like, let's work through some math problems, like word problems that aren't in our math book. Um, some days it's, read something that you are enjoying, that you want to read, not something that you feel like you have to read. And honestly, we don't have a lot of have tos in our homeschool. They are, when I choose the curriculum, I ask them, do you want to do the online teaching program, or do you want me to teach you, or do you want me to be the teacher? Do you want to do health, or do you want to do something else? Like, I believe homeschooling our children is a serious job, but I believe there's, outside of the curriculum, there's other more serious things, and that's character and our relationships, and being able to adapt when life is just throwing stuff at you that you didn't know was going to be coming around the corner. So I just try to keep a pretty good perspective when it comes to book work and all that type of stuff. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I love homeschooling too. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I completely get where you're coming from, and I think that our attitudes sometimes towards homeschooling can play a big part
Mhm.
in our homeschool joys.
Yes.
And I know that whenever I am, like you said, being more teacher instead of mom,
Hmm.
when I have been in that role too long, and I'm not just taking the time to just enjoy my kids and being with my kids because they're my kids, not because I'm their
Hmm.
teacher, I
Hmm.
can tell a difference in my tone. I can tell a difference in the attitude I take towards our school days. And so I think you're onto something. I mean, I think that that's really, really important, especially this episode will be airing the 1st of October. So everybody will be back in their homeschool rhythm and back into that. And I think that sometimes when we get wore out with that role, just taking the time just to enjoy our kids just as mom can really, really absolutely bring our homeschool joy back. So I did not roll my eyes. I feel the same way.
Thank you for not rolling your eyes. I appreciate it.
No, never. I would never do that. Okay. So Latonya, my dear, that is all I have for this episode. So can you tell everybody where they can find you on the web, where they can connect with you?
Okay, so I blog at joyintheordinary.com, and I hang out mostly on Instagram and Twitter. And my handle for both of those is Latonya_MO. And if you are a Facebooker, like you haven't totally ran away from that platform, I have a Facebook group that I mostly do live videos in. I don't really, that's mostly what I do. I try to be encouraging, and it's Authentic Moms Community. So just a place where you can be who you are, whatever type of homeschooler you are, whatever it is that you're doing, whether you work or don't work, whether you use textbooks or not, whether you unschool or traditional homeschool, it's a safe place. We don't really, we really just encourage each other. We don't really get into any arguments about stuff. We just are there to just encourage. So, and that's
Awesome.
Authentic Moms Community.
Okay, well, make sure you send me those links and I will make sure we put those in the show notes to that so everybody can find it.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Latonya, so much. It has been awesome chatting with you, my friend.
All right. Thanks for having me, Misty. And I look forward to you keeping me accountable.
I totally have your back. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been an episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to leave a rating or review on iTunes or whatever platform it is that you use to listen to this podcast. That tells the powers to be I'm not talking to myself. Also, hit subscribe. Then you will catch every episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast each week right there in your podcast feed. You can find show notes and more at joyfullyhomeschooling.com and clicking on the episode number of the episode you are looking for. Thanks, guys. I hope this podcast encouraged you to head out there and have a more joyful homeschool.